Hi everybody, I'm so excited to share with you all of the inspiration that I have in my mind right now and on my work table. I have the windows open, which is the first time in ages since we've had our wildfire situation here in Alberta, Canada. And it's just so nice to hear the birds and have the fresh air. And to be honest, I even don't mind the heavy duty trucks going by because it just reminds me that we have clear air today and how grateful I am just to breathe in fresh air and be able to open my windows. So that's my gratitude for today. I wanted to share with you what I'm up to. These are some originals that I've packaged up, and I have art clients coming to pick them up at my studio today. And I slipped in those cute little, they were former paper artworks that I knew I would not finish and sell. They were practice artworks, and I have a whole bunch of them. I have all of these cute little cards cut up, and what I'm doing is I'm matching something that might have a bit of the color in the original artwork, and I'm pulling out the card and just kind of making it look like it goes with the art. And I love this process. It's super fun, and I used to buy artist cards to go with my art when somebody purchased my art, and I just love this special touch. Oh, that airplane is loud. So grateful for the helicopters too that are helping out with fighting fires. This is a bookmark. I wanted to show you a brilliant idea that my printing company, Art Magic, introduced, which is taking when Art Magic does my canvas prints. So this is Dura canvas material. So this is an example of my artwork in an archival ink on canvas material. And this is one on, if you've heard of giclée prints, this is a fine art print. It's a really beautiful, heavy watercolor paper. And this is a bunch of my cows. Those are my girls. And this gives my client an example of the quality and the beauty of my art prints, because I do have an amazing local printing company called Art Magic, and it's just one person, Ken Chow, and he's incredible. I just wanted to share with you, in the printing process, there can be a lot of waste, and I love the idea of being able to not have so much waste and have something so of value to a client when they purchase my art. They may not be interested in prints. There's a lot of art clients that either love prints or wouldn't go that route. They just want original art and they can afford that. But I like the idea of sort of looking at the piece that was purchased. So this is an original watercolor piece. This particular client had ordered two. I have the other one in tissue paper here. And I snuck in this canvas print. This one has from my All That Matters, the Art of the Matters series that I had done, my girls. And, you know, it reminded me of some of the colors in this original piece. And I thought, what better way, instead of throwing out the scraps from the printing company, I had Ken print with archival ink on these little bookmarks, and it was a way of advertising for myself. It's something, instead of a business card, you know, I can drop it off in one of those mini outdoor libraries if I do art shows. It's just a really cool way of I guess repurposing scraps that would otherwise be thrown out. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of art companies that wouldn't necessarily do that, but definitely if you're in Calgary, Alberta, you want to look up Art Magic, because he's so affordable and his quality cannot be matched, I think. I wanted to just share that with you all. I am going to put this out so I don't forget that my client's picking it up. I always put my art in a waterproof package, as well as have a backboard. And this particular painting here was made on 300-pound paper. So I always recommend 140-pound paper or up to have really great quality work. And I emphasize 140-pound paper over decent watercolors. I would actually be quite content with. I just bought this for my son who's 5, and we love to do watercolor together. And to be honest, these watercolors on decent paper are incredible. They're not archival, obviously. They're not going to have the pigment load or obviously those amazing binders that the other, they don't compare to artist quality watercolors. However, if you're not selling your work and you're wondering, what watercolors do I just start with? Maybe you don't know if you even like to do watercolor. This is just a really affordable way to get something that's not toxic and can be passed on, or you can do it with, if you have grandkids or kids. And I love just that idea of good quality paper can make your watercolor look amazing. So if you're not selling your work, I recommend whatever you can afford, because I have invested in high quality waters and I know I get a lot of questions about that. Again, my preference is whenever I buy watercolor paper, I was so lucky because this is an incredible deal, $3.75 Canadian. I just bought these at our local art store, and I made sure it said 140 pound, or in brackets, it's 300 GSM. And this watercolor paper is amazing. So if you're using something like this, you will love whatever you do. Maybe the watercolor practice that you have, you may not love it because you're not investing in higher quality paper. When I started, I used anything over 98 pounds, but I do recommend heavier, the better. So this is not exactly what I was wanting to go into with you all today. I just thought I'd show you sort of some of my practice before this artwork is picked up. So getting that backboard in a waterproof bag, and yeah, that's just sort of how I package my art. And I'm so excited to share with you what's on my table today. So I had some requests for, I'm just trying to think of where I want to start today. I'm going to show you this journal. I'm just going to move my camera up slightly. This is a homemade art journal. In the last year, I was really investing a lot into art journals that are very expensive. I always leave the price tag on the back. This is Pentalic, $54 Canadian, and it is leather, and I'm actually trying to use non-leather. I'm trying to use vegan art supplies. That is one of the reasons I love the Kuretake paints from Japan, these little paint palettes, and I'll talk about those in my other videos, but they don't use animal products, which is amazing. So I'm not going to get into that, but I prefer not to use anything that animals were used in the process. So this is a very, very beautiful art journal. I just put down sort of a wash of color with this new landscape style that I've been interested in. And but what I decided was, why not make some of my own journals? I was in a bit of a rut and I just wanted to work with my hands. And so I had looked up a whole bunch of art journaling videos. There's so many now. And I made this art journal. I'll just show you this first page as an example. This is my written note about how I was feeling during the day. I use Japanese washi tape, which is just this washi tape that doesn't stick on and it won't pull off too much of your work. And I talked about everything from having a headache to getting, I'd gotten a haircut that day, and I won't get into details, but I had a bit of a reaction to the fragrance in whatever was being used. So it was a way of me documenting what was going on. I wasn't feeling great this day. However, I was able to sit down, and because I didn't pay $54 for this art journal. I made this out of very affordable paper. I just decided to play, and I found one of my old works. So this was a painting that I had sold to someone in British Columbia, a beautiful artist. I believe her name, anyway, I forget her last name. I think it was LB Studios. Anyway, beautiful artist, but she had purchased this painting of mine, and I have purchased some of her work. I absolutely love her. And this painting that is in a giclée print, this is a proof. Something about this painting I just wanted to bring back into my life. I wanted to remember it. I wanted to look back at the marks and the color palettes, the color palette that I used. And what I did was, because I made this journal, oh, and I wanted to give a quick shout out to Louisa Limon, who's on Instagram, and she's an artist that I had met through a Laura Horn art class just online. I discovered her, and I asked her if I could buy this painting because I absolutely loved it, and she was thrilled to be able to sell it. She did embroidery here, and this just reminds me how much I love embroidery in my work. I do a lot of embroidery over top of canvas prints. But I just wanted to say this is not my work. This is Louisa Limon's work. I think she's in Montreal, based out of. It just inspires me, and you know, I thought I'd love to have someone else's work that inspires me on the cover. Back to this original piece that is now in a giclée print. This is the little proof that I got before I put my work into print. I wanted to pull out all of those colors. So in some of my other videos, you've seen how I take a book and I use the book for inspiration. This book is incredible. We'll have to go over this at some point in time. It's a fairly new book, Botanica. But I would take, this is Carrie Schmidt's chapter, a little blurb on the beautiful artist Carrie Schmidt, and what I would do is I would just pull colors that I could pick out. It was like an exercise in pulling colors, finding colors that I have in the supplies I have on hand and putting them on paper. So I did that with this particular exercise, and looking at this brings me so much joy. This was a page in a daily stationery journal that I had purchased. So this is someone else's art, and I just needed a starting point. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, that looks so much like the color palette, without knowing, you know, that I had utilized when I painted this painting many years ago. After I put down the watercolors that I pulled from this piece, I looked at the mark making and I thought, what is it about this piece that I miss, that I love? I often paint my work and I experience the art and the process of painting it, and I don't really miss it after I sell it. And it's very rare that I kind of miss a piece, but there's some that I do, and I want to kind of figure out what it is about those pieces. This piece was very free. I really let go. I was playing with both acrylic and watercolor, and I looked at the mark making and I repeated the marks that I loved just in this journal page. And I almost felt like I was just revisiting a piece by putting down all the things that brought me joy about it. So the color palette, I loved the loose mark making. I believe I used like a charcoal pencil here. It smudges, so it's not one of my favorite things because you need a fixative often, but this is just an art journal. This is what I needed that evening where I had a headache and I had, you know, just had these notes in here. And now if I'm in a rut, I can go back to this page and I can pull colors and create a brand new painting. So if you have work that you absolutely love and you're holding on to, what is it about that piece as an artist that you are resonating with, and how can you bring that back into your life in a new way? I often write notes to myself. So this was a swatch that I had done on a really heavy a really heavy Arches watercolor paper, and I'd written on here, "You are not your productivity." And this was actually 2020. Lots going on that year. And I'd just written, again, "You are not your productivity. Paint for yourself, create for yourself. Remember your why. Why did you start? Remember self-care. Joy is part of my why. Share joy." And that's why I'm doing these videos. I love sharing my inspiration and to give back. I love supporting animal causes and human causes when I can through my art, and that motivates me to paint. So this page that just gives you a little glimpse into this page here. I do love this layout as well. So this is my homemade art journal. Again, notes about how I was feeling. I can go back into this in a little bit more depth. This is what I wanted to pull out today because somebody had asked about it. They wanted me to revisit my inspirational kind of cheat sheet. It's like my Cole's notes, or when I'm stuck doing my art poetry paintings, which are, I'm just going to grab my little oracle deck that I'm currently editing. So this is an example of an art poetry painting, but I'll find one that's, I like this one. We'll use this one for now. So if you haven't been following me, this is what I call an art poetry painting. Now this is on a wallpaper label. It's because I wanted to be able to get a handheld draft of what I hope to publish at some point into a deck of cards. Art cards, an art deck. So I'm digressing, but these wallpaper labels are awesome, by the way. This is my art poetry style. I had written There Are Brighter Days Ahead. No, it's not traditional poetry where I'm using it as rhyming. It's basically my love of colors and how when I put down colors, I feel like it's so poetic. I feel like there's a rhythm, there's a rhyme. I often paint to music. I absolutely love painting to music. And so I call these art poetry. I'll get into more of that background in another video. But I needed sometimes in my life to sit down, and when I'm looking at a blank page, I just needed a map of sorts that reminded me of what I have loved about my art and what has resonated with other people, what is sort of the reason I'm selling certain pieces so quickly. And I did a little map just to remind myself that, because when I started to sell my art, I was really, really lucky. During the pandemic was when my art just took off, and I was basically putting pieces that I had created, just posting on Instagram, selling right off of Instagram, putting them in my mailbox and selling them locally. And I was selling almost every day for a number of months. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm totally digressing, but that's just how my brain works. Thank you for bearing with me. But this map is what I use when I'm sitting down and I'm looking at a blank page and I'm grabbing my watercolor supplies. So let's just say right now, I just got a new palette from the Ocean Paper, so I'm gonna link that in the description. I've just started doing videos on YouTube, so bear with me. I'm just getting used to the process on here. What I did was I had created this little palette, this reference palette, which I usually don't do, but I decided I need to start doing that because I do paint very intuitively, but when I do videos, sometimes I like to choose certain colors. But anyway, here's this blank page, and you know what? I'm going to do it on another piece of paper because I want to show you my reference. Let's go back to that reference that you're asking about. And I'll talk about it because it's probably very hard for you all to see. And this is just something I did for myself. So my writing, it's very messy. Years ago, this would have driven me crazy because my writing is messy. Everything about it is messy. I was trying to get different little pens started. I have writing on here that's kind of random. What did I say at the bottom? I said a black background is harder to work on. That's what I found at the time. But looking back on this now, I know that that white pen I was using was a Jelly Roll, and the Uniball Signo works better than that, I find. So what I'll throw in here right now is just to tell you my favorite white pen. Hopefully they don't change the recipe, is this Japanese Posca pen in the fine tip. And it is 0.7 millimeters, and it's a bullet shaped. That's how I love the dots. This works better than some of those other pens. At least I have found. White is a tricky one. Anyways, now that you know about my pen, this reference sheet is basically reminding myself, okay, I'm gonna grab a piece of my new on sale Strathmore watercolor paper. I'm gonna show you how I use this cheat sheet. So I know that I have to find a color palette that I love, that I'm craving in the moment. And so I'm just gonna start with this new color palette from the Ocean Paper. And I'm gonna start with this beautiful blue. And I'm just gonna put that on here. And in here it says 2 to 3 grounding marks with 1 drip. So at the time I did this little reference sheet, I really liked just 1 drip. So there's my drip. 2 to 3 contrasting acrylics or watercolors. And so this reminded me, I'm just gonna darken this up a little bit. This is the first time I've used this color. It's very beautiful. So this is reminding me to go back in with what I want to have on this cheat sheet is to use neutrals. But basically I'm going to go to 2 to 3 grounding marks with 1 drip. So I consider my grounding marks, I often use dark watercolors. I didn't activate my watercolor palette because I wasn't planning on painting, so I didn't wet it prior to doing this video. Bear with me, just trying to get it going here. Just gonna switch actually to a palette that you'll be able to see the color a little bit better here. So and I didn't know I was using green. Okay, that's good. So I chose my color palette. I'm working with these cooler colors, the green and the blue, and I'm doing 1 drip. This is something that it's funny to read because it was quite a while ago I wrote this and it was very intuitive at the time, but my practice has changed so much. I'm gonna add in this beautiful light color, and looking at this, it starts to get into mark making. So I'm gonna put a little bit more watercolor down. Just trying to decide what colors I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use some of this Daniel Smith metallic because it's sort of ready to go. I'm just gonna put it in the middle here. I'm gonna add in, just feel like adding in maybe more of the blues. Let's just see here. I'm gonna activate my other color palette from the Ocean Paper, get it really, really wet. And that is gonna help me paint faster and show you sort of this exercise I'm doing. Just gonna add in some dark. I love my grounding marks to be dark. Every now and then I put in a bright one. I'm just gonna add that in here. And that's sort of an example of my base art poetry painting. It's just getting watercolor down that I love, that I'm kind of craving in the moment. And I'm gonna add in a little bit of this more opaque peachy color and just watch it move, put a little bit down here. And maybe I wanna add in a little bit more of this orange right in here. I like that. I don't usually paint with these colors. That's very earthy. Maybe I'll pull that up over here. And maybe I'm gonna add in, this is a color I know really well, this kind of dark teal. And this gives you an example of what I'm looking at prior to needing my map. So what I do in my practice is I let this dry, because a lot of what I do over top of wet layers, it's trickier when it's wet. Right now I feel like I can drip this. I would take, in hindsight, I would take this page out. These are very, very stiff pages in here, which I've never used before. Never used this kind of bounded book, believe it or not. Just gonna see, I think I'll rip it. So I don't wanna rip it if I continue to do that, but I'm gonna drip down. I'm gonna add in another drip. So I would let this dry and come back to it on another day at another time when I'm feeling the colors. After that, I would use this reference sheet. So I'll go through what else is on here and I'll give you an example. Let's use my mountain painting. I'm almost finished this little mountain painting here, and I even titled it, this is called Violets Are Blue. This is sort of a style of art poetry with my traditional mountains. These are sort of my best-selling paintings because I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, right by the Rocky Mountains. But if I was having trouble finishing this, so if I was looking at this and I thought, I really want to do mountains, or I just don't know what to do, I would go back to this sheet I had created based on what I love and what I've been selling, and I would look to see, okay, I have 2 to 3 grounding marks. I didn't do the drip here. 2 to 3 contrast acrylics and watercolors. So in here I did add a little bit of acrylic paint, that little bit of pink. Sometimes I add acrylic paint in my work or gouache. I often sign at the end of a drip. So on this particular one, I usually sign right up that, let's just see if I have another example here. I sign right up the stem. So in this particular painting, connection is the key to happiness. You can see my signature going upward, and I believe I did that painting in 2019. I often started out with signing my work. Birds. These are my birds. One holding up the loop. I really liked the idea of the birds almost look like they're holding up these upside down rainbows, or rainbows have been on my mind lately. More black lines, botanicals, lotus flowers. I did a lot of that. Dashes, geometrics. Geometrics, that's something I want to do more of. So I've been really into these flowers, but I would love to do like geometrics in here. And that's something, again, this sheet is older and it's one I'm so familiar with. Adding pastel pinks, so that's that pink here. Adding gelatos, so I love adding a slightly different water-soluble material to an already watercolor base. Subtle roses, so I actually had used my Posca pen to just quickly draw a rose, and those are my subtle roses. I have a question mark, white lines with watercolor pencil. I don't entirely remember that. I think I was using watercolor white pencil instead of white markers or paint pens because they weren't working well at the time. I like to do darkening of the darker lines and making the lighter colors lighter. I have in here oil pastels. I often add in oil pastels. I'll just show you where my favorite oil pastel is. It's this beautiful light gray. It's absolutely tiny because I love it. But see this gray in here? I could just, add in a little bit more of this oil pastel, rub it in. And in this case, I feel like I like it, but maybe it's a little bit too pronounced, so I'm just gonna smooth it out. And it very much looks like the watercolor effect I had here, but I love that color of pastel. So I do add pastel in my work. I have rocks, question mark, mountains, question mark, teardrops, dots. You can see that I have mountains in here. I have, sorry about the trucks outside. Like I said, I'm grateful to have my windows open. I have all this mark making in here, my little E's. Gold metallics. I love adding metallics because I feel like if you can add metallic to your work, it just brings out something different when the light hits it. So that's, there's so many amazing products now with gold. I have leaves down here and just different examples. I love leaves. And I have in here question mark, stencil, and collage because I love to use that in my work as well. I can show you in this oracle deck, which I'll get into. Kind of totally sidetracked where I was going with this whole video, but that is okay. Well, here's an example of a piece that I had embroidery in. Find beauty in asymmetry. So this painting is very asymmetrical. And what was I looking for? Oh, collage. This is Japanese Lokta paper, L-O-K-T-A, Lokta. I bought it at the art store. You can use origami papers, but that little moon was Lokta paper collage. I'm not going to put this in my Oracle deck because I don't know if Lokta paper is royalty free. So this is something I'm going to edit out and probably just keep to myself. Mystery holds magic. I love this little painting despite using something that may or may not be royalty free. So I don't want to publish that. And so that gives you an example of how I use this inspiration file. So you'll be able to create your own with practice. And all you need to do is just sit down, do what you love. So this is an example of just painting over top of black paper. And I had put this in my art journal just as a reminder to use different color toned papers instead of just white. And so I'm going to sign off for now, but I am so excited to share an inspirational book about rainbows by Jessica Swift. This book is incredible. I'm going to do another video on that probably tomorrow, and I'm going to show you how I incorporate some of the rainbows into my work. And for now, I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll go back to my little map on a day where I just feel like it. So I hope I've inspired you with this video, and I hope you can get out some of your supplies that you may not be using, find some really good quality paper, and just play around and don't judge it.